Everyone, and thank you for completing your extra credit written assignment. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So questions 1 and 3 were calculated. We're going to go ahead and take a look at those last. I want to go ahead and look at questions 2 and 4. So question 2, explain the difference between seniority pay and merit pay. All right, so first, merit pay, very simply stated, you get paid for your performance. A lot of corporate America uses merit pay. If you are not doing well at your job, you're not going to get a good raise compared to your peer who might be killing it. Same thing with, seniority pay is a little bit different. Excuse me, it's not the same. It's very different. Seniority pay will pay people the same amount of pay, and they get the same amount of raises based on the years of service. So while merit pay is primarily used in corporate America, capitalism, pay for performance, all that good stuff, seniority pay is used a lot in government, whether it's military, police, fire, teachers, for instance, government workers, whether it's at state or local level. You can go ahead and look at teachers, for instance. All teachers that start get paid the same amount, and regardless of how well they teach and how great of a teacher they are, they get an annual raise, whatever that raise might be. They'll get the same amount as their peer who might not be as good as them, right? And so I think that's the frustration with a lot of teachers, is that they come in, they get paid a starting salary right out of college or school. They're excited, and then they realize quickly that even though they're killing it, their peer that might be a slacker, that might not be good at their job, that might just are burned out and don't want to do it anymore. uh, they're not even putting in half the effort, but yet they're getting paid the same amount. And so that's very frustrating. If you've ever been in a seniority pay or a longevity type pay situation, it can be very frustrating to be uh, motivated to do well in that job, right? So we all know that teachers don't teach because of the pay, they teach because they love what they do, but it can also be frustrating too. So at any rate, I'll move on from the difference between seniority pay and merit pay. So hopefully you were able to provide the advantages and disadvantages of each. Kind of talked about those just then. And then also, what do you believe that applying both simultaneously is a good idea? Now, obviously, I believe both is a good idea. Personally, I'll go ahead and give you my 2 cents. Merit pay and seniority pay. I think if you combine them and have a hybrid, I think that makes a lot of sense, because as you want your workforce to be able to stay with your company, and so you can give an annual raise based on seniority. And so that's what my company actually used to do. They used to give everyone the same raise. So everyone back in the old days when people actually got annual raises, we'd get like 5% every year. Everyone would get the same amount, 5%. But then what they did was, for those who were meeting, depending on how your performance was for that year, you can get an additional raise. And so you could get anywhere from, additional 1 to 4% based on your performance. So you would I used to get, 9, 10% raises way back when. The 80s and 90s were good times, right? Not so much anymore, but that's a great philosophy to have. That way you're paying for longevity, you're rewarding employees staying with the job, because the longer an employee stays with you, the more they know about their job, right? But then you're also rewarding those who are going above and beyond. And so having a hybrid system of both seniority and merit pay could be beneficial. All right, number 4, it's projected that many jobs will be replaced by automation. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. This is a personal opinion, and there is no right or wrong answer. And so my question here is, do you think that unemployment will go up or down based on if automation and robotics takes over? It's a personal opinion. I have an opinion on it as well. I'll give you my opinion. You don't necessarily have to agree, but I do believe while there might be a loss of jobs, because robots and automation are taking over some of the jobs, I also believe that other jobs will be created. And so there's opportunity for those other jobs. So I don't believe a spike in unemployment will happen, only because there are other jobs in lieu of the jobs that were taking place. A really great example of this going back in the 1980s when computers made their way to offices across America. You have to remember there was a time when we did not have computers in the workplace. You think about corporate America in a typical office space. Most people have, you think of computers today, of course, but back when, way back when, they did not have computers. They only had, a typewriter. Everything was handwritten. Anything you had to do, it was very old and antiquated, as we call it today. They predicted that those computers coming into the office would replace everyone's job. I remember my dad and his friends would talk about how they're going to be replaced. These computers are going in, they're going to be able to calculate these spreadsheets so much faster than they could ever. And what are they going to do for jobs? Needless to say, none of them lost their jobs because of the computers that came in. And so same, I think, goes for automation. Um, it's not necessarily going to, people aren't going to lose their jobs. They're just going to need to pivot their skill set in a different direction so that way they can support the new industry of automation and robotics. Somebody needs to create the automation and the robotics. Someone needs to repair them. Companies need to create that software, that hardware. And so there's definitely a lot of opportunity for jobs in that area. But you don't necessarily have to agree with that. So as long as you support that, you will get full credit. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at questions 1 and 3, and then we'll wrap up. So question 1, so under the merit pay system, calculate Elizabeth's pay and Robert's pay for 2020, and then throughout the years of 5 years. Let's go ahead and take a look at these numbers. So Elizabeth started off at 48,000. So they were both hired in at the same time. She was hired in at 48,000. Robert was only hired in at 45,500. So maybe she had a little bit more experience, a little bit, maybe a better education, more education. Now there's different reasons why Elizabeth was hired a little bit more than Robert, but whatever that reason is, she's getting paid $2,500 more a year. Now that doesn't sound like a lot. Okay, $2,500 more a year. But then when you calculate that over the course of the months, you're only talking about $20 or $30. I'm not really sure what you're talking about per paycheck, but at any rate, it's not all that much. However, I want to show you how this can add up over time. Now, Elizabeth kills it every year. She's getting 4% raises every year. She's at the top of her game. She's killing it in the job. Robert, well, he's getting a 2% raise. He's still doing well, but he's more of I'll do whatever it takes to get by. But Elizabeth is definitely crushing it in the job. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that's going to do over the course of the years. So Elizabeth starts off at 48,000, Robert starting off at 45,000. So at the end of 5 years, she's making $58,399.34, whereas Robert is making $50,235.68. So while she started off only making $2,500 more than he, at the end of 5 years, she's actually making $8,000 more than he. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot. Again, it's like, oh, it's only $8,000. Now, $8,000 is a lot, don't get me wrong, but she is getting a 4% raise. Her raise is twice as much as his is. Why, it's only $8,000, okay, great, you're killing it. You're working 60 hours, Elizabeth, but really at the end of the day, is it worth it? It might not be worth it in year 5 because there's only an $8,000 difference. But what I want to do is I want to show you what happens over the course of their career. Now, assuming that Elizabeth graduated college and they both started at the age of 22 years old, typically you go to 4-year college or 2-year college at 20, you're done at 20 or 22 years old. When you graduate and you get a job at 22 years old, you still have over 45 years to work. So if you're in your 20s, yes, retirement is not until you're 67. And so you have 40 years before you retire. I want to go ahead and show you what happens over the course of those 40 years and how just a little bit of a percentage raise every year adds up. So right now, we only have 5 years. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to do 20 years. And I'll show you what that looks like. Now I have calculations in here. So, oh, I think I forgot to tell you how I calculated these things. So I took 48,000 and then you times it by the 4%. And so the first year, and then you add the 4% on there, and then you take the 49,000 and you keep doing that. So here are these numbers. I'm pretty sure most of you were able to figure that out, right? All right, but let's go ahead and take a look at what happens over the course of 20 years. So if Elizabeth is not promoted, let's assume that she's not promoted, she's in the same job for 20 years, which we know that's not likely the case, but let's just assume that she is. Over 20 years, she gets a 4% raise every year. At the end of her 20 years, which she's only in her 40s at this point, because if she started in her 20s, she's only in her 40s, she's now making $105,000. She went from 58,000 all the way up to $105,000. Good for her, right? You want to see what Roberts is? Because he started off pretty much the same pay, but he's only getting a 2% raise. Now here at the end of 5 years, it's not that big of a difference. It's only $8,000, but at the end of 20 years, take a look at this number right here. You can see that at the end of 20 years, he is only making $67,610.61. Same job, same career path. She's getting a 4% raise. He's getting a 2% raise. She's making 105,000 and he's making 67,000. So it does add up. I think it's important for you to realize that when you are, negotiating your salaries, when you are going for your raises or when a raise is offered, I think you should always try to tactfully, with diplomacy, advocate for the highest possible raise, because at the end of your career, it does matter. Look at the difference in pay here. 2% compared to 4%. It doesn't sound like a lot until you calculate it out. And it's not even a lot after 5 years. You're only talking $8,000. But that $8,000 after 20 years is almost close to $40,000 difference a year. So these are things to keep in mind. And I hope that you were able to not only calculate these answers, because that was part of the question. So make sure that you calculated these correctly. Here are the answers. You can see them on my screen, but also explain why it's important as I just demonstrated. All right, question number 3 talks about piecework. And so what I like to think of piecework is basically bonuses. They use this a lot in the garment industry or any sort of industry that requires a lot of getting things out the door quickly, right? And so you get an hourly pay here at this company of $7.50. You're expected to create at least 20 pieces an hour. Anything above that, you'll get paid $1.50 per piece. Now that doesn't sound like a lot. Oh, okay, wow, $1.50. What can I buy with $1.50 these days? Not much. However, if you go above and beyond day in and day out, that can add up significantly. Let's go ahead and take a look. So and hopefully your answers look something like this. I should have some sort of table or something along these lines that look like this. So for $10 above standard, what this person would make is an additional $15. So all I did is I took $10 or 10 pieces, 10 pieces times $1.50, and I got $15. All right, in the second hour, 5 times $1.50, so a bonus of $7.50. The third hour, we were tired, or she was tired, or he was tired, whoever it was, and they didn't get a bonus. But then in the 4th, 5th, and 6th hour, they kind of picked it up. So in the 4th hour, they did 11 over standard. And so that equated to an additional $16.50. The 5th hour was $10.50, and then the 6th hour was $4.50. So at the end of the day, this person, because they were very efficient and did their job not only well, but went above and beyond, they were able to take home an additional $54 that day. That does add up. So that $1.50, while it doesn't sound like a lot, can absolutely add up. So it's always important anytime you're talking about numbers, especially when it comes to your pay, always crunch the numbers and put it in front of you so you can see just how much more money you can make. So let's look at a person that doesn't go above and beyond. They make the 20 pieces an hour, and that's all they do. Well, they're going to take home $45 that day, $7.50. It's a 6-hour shift. I know typically it's an 8-hour, but I only did 6 just because. All right, so $45 they would take home. They were able to take home an additional $54 that day because they went above and beyond. So instead of taking $45 home, they took home $99. Now that $99 compared to 45, all right, so I made an additional $54 that day. No big deal. But let's say you work 5 days a week. So I'm going to go ahead and times that 54. Let's see. Oops. And times 54. And you work 5 days a week. That's an additional $270 that week they can make. And there are 52 weeks in a year, assuming that you work maybe 50 because you take a vacation, 2-week vacation. So we're going to take that 270 times 50 weeks. You can earn yourself an additional $13,500 just by working a little bit harder and a little bit extra and really trying your best to go above that standard. So it does add up, and it can definitely make a difference in your paycheck. So this is basically the answers that I was looking for. As long as you have some of these answers, the 54, the 99, and then you didn't have to have the 270, of course, or the 1350. That's fine. 13,500. You didn't need to have that, but I just wanted to go ahead and demonstrate what that looks like over the course of a year, because I believe that it's very important to always calculate and run the numbers, because that could be your motivator, right? All right. So that's basically it. As long as you were able to come up with that and then talk a little bit about if you think that incentive plan will boost productivity, and what are your thoughts on that? I will, again, thank you so much for doing the extra credit. And if you have any questions, reach out. Thanks.